also the board president of People's Action. People's Action is a national organization of low-income and working-class people from across the country. We are united to bring transformative change for our people and our planet. Thank you all so much for joining us today, specifically to have a conversation about how to move our issues forward in such a critical time. This is an unprecedented time. I'm deeply worried about my community. I'm worried about my dad, who is 67 years old and still working at a meatpacking plant here in Colorado. He's risking his life every day to go to work for a job that doesn't even value his humanity or his contributions. Our people are risking everything and they are losing everything. It is critical that in this moment, we don't just fight for immediate support, but we also fight for a different tomorrow. Because let's be clear, normal was not good for us. And so why go back to normal? This is the time to fight for a future in which the lives of our people, like my dad, and all are prioritized. So thank you for joining us to continue the fight that the Sanders campaign embodied, building a movement politics in this country that advances an agenda that is not based on what people tell us we can get, but is grounded on what our communities need and the things that will transform our economy and democracy to make it work for all of us, not just corporations. With that, I'm going to pass it to George Gale, who's the director of People's Action.
Thanks, Lizette. Yeah, glad to be in this fight with you. So welcome everybody. It's good to have so many people joining the call, and I know more joining as we start here. My name is George Gale. I'm the director of People's Action. I've been part of the People's Action family since I first became an organizer down in Southern Indiana 25 years ago, and proud to be on this team. I want to start by giving a shout out to Senator Sanders, his incredible staff, of which we have a few on tonight, and all the People's Action family that made the decision to throw down big for the Sanders campaign. The senator may have suspended his campaign, but as Bernie always said, this fight was much bigger than him. And so the fight to put people and planet first continues. So tonight we're going to hear from key members of the Sanders campaign team, key leaders inside of People's Action. And we're also going to hear from Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, both of who joined us during our presidential forums that we held in the fall. And with that, I'd like to introduce the Congresswoman from Minnesota's 5th Congressional District, and to us, one of the most inspiring leaders of this moment in American life. Congresswoman Omar, thanks for joining us.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm so glad to be in community with you all. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here with you all tonight. As many of you know, it's been barely 6 months since I joined the People's Action and Senator Sanders in Iowa for the Presidential Candidate Forum. And it was there that I laid out the progressive vision we wanted to see in the White House. And while our movement has faced a setback right now, that vision has not changed. Every single setback is an opportunity for us to push for progress. We know exit poll after exit poll has shown us that the American people still want to live in a society where their human right to healthcare is guaranteed, and a society where they have the opportunity to tackle the climate crisis that we have, and a society where they have the opportunity to be freed from the shackles of student debt, a society where they have an opportunity to live amongst their brothers and sisters who are escaping from atrocities around the world. In moments like this, I'm quite reminded of what my grandfather used to say. He was born in colonized Somalia and always really fought for an opportunity to live in a democratic society where his voice can fight alongside people to fight for positive change. And I know in his spirit, I continue to be in this fight for an opportunity for us to live in a society where we all have a chance to push for proper progress. There is still an opportunity for us to craft the most progressive democratic policy platform in history. Just today, in his endorsement of Biden, President Obama said that if he was running today, he wouldn't run on the platform he ran on in 2008, that the world has changed and we need to evolve with it as well. I always talk about how the people that seek to represent us need to have fluency in the struggles of day-to-day lives of people, and we now have an opportunity to really put a vision forward in this new political fight that we are in, and make sure that our current platform includes all of our voices, that we continue to be visible in the platform that is being formed, and that we don't let up at all in what's important to us. And I know that most of you, like myself, are committed even more for fighting for somebody we don't know. So the not me us continues, and I think when we are thinking about the kind of housing crisis that is upon us at the moment is going to be one that is worse than the 2018 crisis, and we have an opportunity to really put forth a bold vision. A few months ago, I introduced my Homes for All, which guarantees a home for everyone in this country, and ability to live a dignified life. And as of right now, with this pandemic, we see debt piling up for renters and mortgage holders. And despite money not having a steady income for the foreseeable future, if we don't take action immediately, families will lose their homes and the housing market will suffer an irreversible damage. Already there are calls across the country for rent strikes, and it's going to be really important for us to make sure that we do everything that we can in hearing that call, and produce legislation that is going to cancel rent, and make sure that there is an opportunity for funds to be created for landlords, and an opportunity for lenders to be able to recoup the money that they will ultimately lose. So our rent cancellation and mortgage cancellation legislation will come out at the end of this week. And I look forward to working with all of you in trying to make sure that we are not only protecting the lives of people, but we are also protecting the livelihoods of folks around the country, especially in our state. There is an eviction moratorium, and there is an anxiety already forming of what happens after those the emergency declarations are lifted, and folks will get evicted from their homes. And so I've been in conversation with our governor, and hope that all of you will join me in calling on your legislators to also pressure governors around this country to make sure that they have a plan in place, so that we don't see the kind of catastrophe that awaits many of our renters around the country as they get evicted when those eviction moratoriums are lifted. Again, we are more than ever committed to this fight, and I look forward to continuing on this journey with all of you as we continue to put pressure on electeds and those who will ultimately be elected to represent us in the highest office of this country. So thank you all for having me.
Thank you. My name is Linda Armitage, and I am a board member of the Jane Addams Senior Caucus in Chicago, and a member of the People's Action campaign to win a homes guarantee. I lost everything in 2008. I thought I might become homeless and be forced onto the streets with my cat. I moved into subsidized senior housing, but 6 months later, the building was put on the market to the highest bidder. Again, homelessness threatened. My neighbors and I organized and saved our homes, but the building was sold to the Chicago Housing Authority. We struggled daily to maintain our dignity and welfare. Now, in the midst of this pandemic, so many people, including seniors like me, people on fixed incomes, and people who have been laid off, are unable to pay rent or mortgage payments. Meanwhile, corporations have gotten massive bailouts while the people get crumbs. I feel like I am reliving my nightmare, and I know many people around the country are living their own nightmares. Representative Omar, we do need immediate relief today and a homes guarantee for the future. Could you please expand on your legislation that you are about to introduce to make sure that people do not have to choose between paying for housing or groceries? And also expand a little bit on your vision for really what we need to guarantee housing as a human right in this country.
Thank you so much, Linda, for that question. I really hear you and appreciate your voice on this. The federal government obviously needs to act to prevent a full collapse of the national housing market, which is why I'm introducing my bill this week, instituting a national moratorium on rent and home mortgage payments to last through the duration of this pandemic. Under my legislation, payment on all rental homes will be canceled, and landlords will be able to apply to have their losses covered by the federal government through a rental property relief fund to be administered by the Department of Housing and Labor, Urban Development, HUD. Additionally, all home mortgage payments will be suspended, with mortgage holders being eligible to apply for a similar HUD-operated home lenders relief fund. The COVID-19, as you alluded to, has exposed a glaring racial disparities, and we have seen it exist in many of our states and localities for far too long. And now we have an opportunity to create a policy that remakes these systems and makes it more equitable for all of us. I think if we really look at some of the positive things that can come out of this, the challenges that this pandemic will produce for so many of us, it is that we have the opportunity to put forth policies that are going to have a positive impact on our lives. And as we see right now, every single day, we are hearing how the federal government really is rushing to come to the aid of corporations, and not much urgency is being utilized in coming to the aid of everyday people. There are folks that we are now talking about as essential workers, who we obviously understood as being essential in our communities. But so many people don't know that every single person who we are thankful for their service, as our store clerks, as the people who put food on the shelves, as farmers, as the people who are driving our delivery trucks. Many of us forget how many of them, as they feed us every single day, might not be making a living wage to be able to feed themselves, to house themselves, to care for their families. And so we have an opportunity to really now amplify the policies that we have been talking about, like Homes for All. Thank you so much for your help in formulating our Homes for All policy. We can now try to make sure that the people understand how important it is going to be to guarantee homes to all, to guarantee healthcare for people, to guarantee relief from eviction and relief from the kind of anxiety that people have as they struggle in paying their rent and their mortgages right now.
Thank you so much, Representative Omar, for joining us and for your vision for our country and for our world, and for your leadership on the Homes Guarantee and other issues we face within the multiracial working class. It means a ton for you to join us this evening, so thank you for your leadership. Next, we have up a panel. My name is Ryan Greenwood. I'm the Director of Movement Politics here at People's Action. We'll have a panel of senior Bernie Sanders for President campaign staff. These folks not only led one of the most powerful presidential campaigns in history, they were movement organizers before, during, and they will be after the campaign. Through all of our organizing to elect Senator Sanders president, some of it had to be firewalled from the work the campaign was doing. So we love this moment where we can get their perspective from inside the campaign, that on what worked, what we did to build together before and during and after the campaign that made it so close. What more could we have done as a movement before and during the campaign to make victory possible? And what does loss point to us as work we need to start doing now? And finally, since so much energy was galvanized around the campaign, what should we do next to extend and amplify that energy going forward? First up is going to be Rafael Navar, who is the California and New York State Director for the campaign. Thanks for joining us, Rafael. Take it away.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. First, I just want to say thank you to People's Action and everybody on this call for all of the work that you all did to support the campaign, support the policy and the platform. And my work was, as Ryan mentioned, I was the California State Director, then the New York State Director, and your affiliates on the ground were critical for us in order to achieve our victories and move our work forward. I want to say a couple things. I know that it's a difficult moment. Folks are still processing, but I really want to lift up some of the victories that we achieved, because I think they're important and they're informative to your question of where we go forward. One is, you think about, and I'm thinking of California again as the state that I ran. We, in the 8th largest economy in the world, essentially had the victory of a democratic socialist platform for a massive economy, massive population. And when you add the millions of other Americans who voted for Bernie Sanders, we are at a moment where millions of Americans are saying they want this kind of government, they want this kind of process. And I think about, when I started organizing in the 90s, how I couldn't even, you didn't openly criticize capitalism for fear of being red baited or what have you. And now it's on full, open discussion of a crisis of our political and economic system. And so that victory was moved forward by not only the 2020, but the 2016 presidential campaign of Bernie Sanders. And that's a massive, massive thing to acknowledge and uplift. I'd also say, we had an amazing work to do with, your affiliates and obviously in New York, less so because we had less time and frankly, the virus stopped us from doing on the ground work. But in California, we had an amazing event with Ground Game LA, where we had the senator endorse your housing platform, which is the boldest platform you have from any elected official. And so that endorsement, that event where we were able to meet with on the ground activists, housing activists, as well as we were named in California, our entire co-chairs for the state were not elected. They were all movement people, including Daisy Vega, who is one of your leaders for Ground Game LA. So it was an exciting work that happened on the ground and energy. And we've really developed and trained an entire another generation of activists that are able to move this work forward. And when you look at California or even New York, how they've changed since 2016, we all obviously know of AOC and other leaders, and Ilhan and all these other great leaders. But if you look down ballot, we have New York is a completely different state politically, and much credit goes to the work and the discourse that was raised by Senator Sanders. California is the same. And so what I always remind my staff in our discussion is that we have set the terms for future struggle. We have reshaped the context in which we will engage in future fights, and we have made them more favorable conditions for our movement. And so the question is now, what do we do moving forward? I think it is critical in this moment that organizations like People's Actions that have longevity, that have been on the ground, have been raising this analysis that was echoed by the campaign nationally and at scale, but that now you all can actually come in and organize thousands of people, millions of Americans who are looking for solutions to this massive health and economic crisis. And right now, there's millions of folks who would have maybe never engaged in the politics that we've been organizing, or it would have been harder to get them engaged. This opening is huge, and they're looking for answers. They're looking for leadership. Frankly, I think folks have been looking since 2008, and I think we are in a major upsurge of movement. And so that being said, I'll close that I think this is a huge opening for us to take advantage of, and I appreciate all the work that you've already done, but I think all the work you will do moving forward will transform and allow for the victories that we need to get in this country. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Raphael. Next up, we've got Misty Rebick. Misty is a former board chair for Iowa CCI Action, the powerful People's Action group in that state. She was the Iowa State Director and National Director for Field and Organizing for Bernie Sanders for president. Take it away, Misty.
Hey, everybody. Honored to be here with so many of you who have been in the struggle and in the fight for so long. When we started the campaign in Iowa back in March, I told organizers from the very beginning that we were going to do something that was unprecedented in the state of Iowa and unprecedented in political organizing. We're going to move away from what I call transactional organizing to transformational organizing, that we are going to build lasting people power by training more people up to be leaders than any electoral campaign had done. And we were going to ask everyday working people to do things they hadn't been asked before to do. And we did it. And we did it with groups like Iowa CCI and Iowa CCI Action. We did it with groups like Food and Water Watch. We did it with the Climate Strike kids in Iowa. We really believed that we were and are a movement of movements, that we are resting on the legacy of the deep issue-based organizing that has come before us. And what we did in Iowa is, we met people where they were at. We held restaurant worker organizing groups where 60, 70, 80 restaurant workers would come and stay for hours to talk about how they're going to organize their restaurants that they worked at for Bernie Sanders, to get every single server, every single back house worker to go and to caucus for Bernie Sanders. We organized a futsal tournament where we brought together refugees from many different countries. Over 200 people showed up to play futsal in the name of Bernie Sanders and to get their family and friends educated about the caucus and what it meant to go caucus. We translated that training into 8 languages in Iowa. We had the most robust student organizing program I think that we've ever seen, probably nationally for sure, but definitely in Iowa. We were organizing on over 30 campuses across Iowa. And we believed in students' ability to organize their peers. We trained them and we brought them along. I believe that what we did in Iowa was really unprecedented. There was a moment when we held a climate summit with Senator Sanders and Representative Ocasio-Cortez, where we had more than 2,000 people come and listen to a panel of everyday Iowans, farmers, activists, scientists who were CCI members to talk about what the climate crisis looked in Iowa. And Senator Sanders and Representative Ocasio-Cortez took questions from the audience. It lasted 4 hours and people sat through the entire thing. That kind of organizing, that is, not only lifting up the kind of candidate that we had, but the kind of issues that we all have been organizing around for a long time. And then when I think about what we did in Iowa, we won the Iowa caucus, by 6,000 votes, which isn't a lot. But I think that gets to something that the Sanders campaign was willing to invest in because of the work that had been done before us, which was investing in, we organized around satellite caucuses where 400 people who never caucused before, speaking in Laotian, or speaking in whatever their native tongue was coming to caucus, and mosques and places of faith. One of the first satellite caucuses that went was at a meatpacking factory in Tama, Iowa, where 19 of the workers who showed up were for Bernie, and there's only one other person who showed up for another candidate. We call that organizing, transformationally, right? Meeting people where they're at. We have a lot to learn from what we did. I think, part of it is scale. How do we continue to scale up and grow to the mass levels that it's going to take to win the next time, right? But I think, when I think about what's next and how do we manage this moment, very much off of what Raphael just said, is this moment has been waiting for us. We have been all organizing through the Sanders campaign, through all of our own work for this moment. The country and the world needs us now more than ever. It needs leaders like Representative Tlaib. It needs leaders like us. It needs leaders like Linda, who is just asking this question of the representative. This is our moment. It's our moment to come in together, create coalitions that we weren't able to create before, because frankly, everybody's self-interest is on the line. Our lives are on the line. And people who we've known as essential workers, and I guess what I want to say is the senator has always centered workers in our campaign because we believe work is what unites us as people. And in this moment, when now what we call essential workers, who we've always valued, those essential workers funded our campaign, and they were what propelled us to victory in the first 3 states. So we believe in the power of everyday people. Senator Sanders believes in that. And we were committed from the very beginning of this campaign to invest in the work that groups like People's Action and Iowa CCI have been doing for decades. And it's going to be those groups who are going to bring us through the next year as we're facing this pandemic, but who's going to grow real political power. So the next time around, we are celebrating a full victory all around, and we're going to put people in the White House, right? So we can do it. It's all about plugging in into groups like People's Action and Iowa CCI to get it done.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Missy. Hugely appreciate your leadership in the campaign and the movement. Just want to make an announcement. I think we've got it on the banner, but if folks want to hear our presentation in Spanish, you should dial this number that's being broadcast on your phone. Si quiere escuchar nuestra presentación en español, marque este número en su teléfono. Next up, we've got National Political Director for Bernie Sanders for President, Ana Lilia Mejia. Ana Lilia?
Hi all. So first and foremost, thank you for having me on and having our team on. This was, we all put in every ounce of ourselves into this race because we knew that, the fight was bigger than just an election. We always say it like, this is the most important election, but with this race in particular, it's do or die in so many ways. And I'm hopeful that we're going to continue to be able to push our progressive values. And as the senator always talks about, beating the most dangerous president in modern history with a different candidate, but still pushing our progressive values. I'm going to jump. Obviously, what we built was significant and really powerful. I think, I am deeply, deeply grateful to the Congresswoman, to People's Action, to the Jane Addams group, all of the different affiliates, as well as the organization as overall offering their support of the senator. I was really proud to lead our political department. I come out of movement, and so I knew that whether it was forming policy or having discussions about what issues, people, concerns, speakers to highlight and to bring, offer our stage to, sometimes figuratively, sometimes literally. I knew it was really important to partner with all of you because of just the power of the work that you've carried way before this election and will continue to do so. I want to focus on, I hate to be the one to do it, but what I wish would have happened differently. The biggest thing from my vantage point from running the political department was, the tension that exists as movement leaders between offering our support to an elected as, a birthright without testing them or pushing them for results, and, holding, like, at what point do you transition from target to comrade? As Ryan and I were talking about earlier, I wish the reality is that we were facing off against some of the most powerful interests on the planet. We were challenging the most important thing for many of these institutions, their money, their income, their profits. And so it wasn't surprising that there was an immediate consolidation of the centrist and even the right within the Democratic Party against our campaign. And, I think exploring as activists, like, how do we build obviously better allies, but how do we also in elected officials and hold them accountable, but how do we also like mobilize and consolidate in a quicker way, so that next time that we have a candidate that is on point with our issues, that we're able to actually bring them to to victory. The one thing that I know that we can continue to do moving forward, and I'm checking my time so that I'm not over. The main thing I think that we should do and continue to do and build on is that, by telling our stories, by sharing our hardships, we do two things. One, we foment outrage amongst the general populace. We give light to a struggle that is, destructive to human beings, but we also make people feel less alone, right? It is very easy. The way our society is built, in many ways, people who are the victims of oppression feel like they are at fault, and are made to feel that way so that they feel disempowered and not challenge the structures that are actually keeping them down. And so what I would love for organizations like People's Action and for all the different affiliates is to really think about, how do we continue to foment outrage? How do we continue to tell our stories? There's still a platform, whether it's social media or collective action across organizations, to uplift the personal stories and how we are being left behind and failed by status quo, and how we're not alone in this struggle. For me, the ability to offer our platform to allow organizations and leaders from People's Action to really tell their truths was the biggest gift for me to be able to witness. And if there's one thing I would encourage all of you to continue to do, aside for what all my all the things that my brilliant colleagues shared, it's really that it's like we have an opportunity to foment outrage. We have an opportunity to continue to tell our stories. We have an opportunity to let people know that we're not alone in these situations, and that it's not our fault. And there are systems and structures that need to be dismantled to really allow us to fully flourish. So thank you again. And thank you all for the incredible support. It came at an incredible, important time. And I know the senator was, I'm extending his gratitude for the support that People's Action lent the campaign and to Senator Sanders.
Thank you so much, Anna Lily. I'm with you on outrage, and we're going to be getting into the systems of oppression next, and actually talk about our agenda and that of the right wing. So first of all, huge thanks to you for all your work on the campaign. All three of you were part of building a movement that advanced justice. Thank you so much. Next up is Nigel Tan. Take it away, Nigel.
Yes, thank you. Hello, all. So we're going to start to get a little bit more specific about who we are and what it is we actually want to do together and what we deserve to do together. And I want to pick up a thread that Representative Omar led on, which is that people out in the world, not just voters, but just people, agree with us on policy, and they agree and they share our values in a major way. But they haven't taken actions that actually reflect that. And so it's on us to organize them into actions that reflect the values that they care about. And to do that, we need a collective and bold agenda. So who we are is People's Action is, if you're a part of the People's Action family, you are committed to building power of poor and working people through issue campaigns and elections. And when we say poor and working people, we mean everyone who is hurt by the 1% in corporations. That is poor people, that's low income people, that's working class people, professionals, etc. That also cuts across racial lines and gender lines. We mean Black people, white people, Latino people, Asian and Native people. And we mean men and women, transgender and gender nonconforming. And that's important because everyone has a place in this bold agenda that we're talking about. And that's going to take that much power to get the things that we actually deserve. And one of the reasons a bold agenda is so important is because the other side had a bold agenda. They unraveled a lot of the things we had won over 40 years. And so People's Action decided to create our own 40-year agenda. And so I'm going to walk through the planks of what that agenda looks like. The first is that we want an economy and society that works for us, people, not the 1% and corporations. That means we will dismantle the structure that's already created that doesn't work for us, in which too much money is controlled by too few, and win an economy designed to benefit every single person. That's something that we deserve. The second part of our long-term agenda is that we are going to create policies that serve the public good. And in order to get those policies, we'll have to have a real democracy. That means we break the 1%'s control over our government and our political process. And instead, communities have the ability to fully participate in the decisions that affect their lives. So we want to create policies that serve the public good and benefit all people. In order to get there, we will have to confront racism head on. We'll have to honor that this country and this society was built on structural racism, and we will overcome the ways in which racism has been built into the economic structure of this country. The second big structure we'll have to combat is gender. We will need to end structural barriers to gender equity and opportunity that impact women, LGBTQ people, and people who don't conform to traditional gender norms. So with those two planks there, we'll also need to take care of this planet and the environment. We'll need to push for policies and platforms that topple a world where corporations can operate with no regard for the damage they create. And we will place it with a world where we live and work in sustainable ways that do not destroy the planet or poison our people. We want to have a harmonious relationship with the planet. And so that's big. And if you agree with that, I'm glad you're on the call on this call together. All right, you definitely have a place in this platform, and we need you and the people who you bring to help join us. And in order to get to this long-term agenda, we'll need to change or evolve the ways that we organize. And here are some of the ways that evolution looks like. The first is that we'll have to fight for bold demands. We're not just going to fight for the things we think we can win. We want to fight for the things we know that our communities need. Because when we shoot for the stars, for example, you can land in the clouds. We want to go aim big and shoot for the structural demands that change how things work. The second thing we are going to do is we're going to engage in the battle for big ideas. It's not enough just to talk about the things that matter to us and the policies that we want. We have to articulate why. We have to create narratives and push narratives that touch people's heartstrings and talk about values and engage on what are the ways people are making meaning of what's happening for them. We have to lay the groundwork for our ideas to just make common sense. The third thing we need to do is build capacity across the movement. Part of the structures that are set up to hold us back push us to work in ways that don't actually reflect the collective values that we need. And so we're going to combat that. We're going to work across the entire movement so that we're not leaving any power on the table. The fourth thing we're going to do is we're going to arc towards and build towards governing power. We want our people who share our life experiences, to run and win for office, and we want to work with them to have policies that actually reflect what we need at a local level. We're going to confront, fifthly, race and gender as strategic forces. We want to hold healing space for the ways in which structural oppression hurts us and causes trauma, and we want to politicize the fact that those are there not to hurt us, but to protect the power and wealth of the 1%. And then lastly, we are going to build class unity. We're going to build across class lines because we got to have enough power to take this all down. So that's broad strokes. I hope y'all are feeling what we're putting down. That's our 40-year long-term agenda for what we are arcing towards. And now we're going to get a little bit more specific about the People's Action Program and how it adds up to the long-term agenda. So I'm excited to introduce the co-chair for the Bernie Sanders campaign in the state of Hawaii, and someone who's on national staff leading our climate justice program, Kanyela Ng.
Thanks, Nigel. And just what Lizette said in her beautiful opening, and a lot of people that follow that, this is a long fight, y'all. And we know our ideas don't come from like one brilliant mind, right? They're shaped by the experiences of all of us. And right now, this movement, the movements we are in are actually movements within a movement, and we're not going to win every battle. And in fact, actually, my story is a prime example of that. Like, I'm Kanyela Ng. I'm a Sanders co-chair in Hawaii, climate justice campaign director for People's Action. But before that, I served as a state legislator, and then I ran for Congress in 2018 alongside Ilhan with Justice Democrats. And I'm really grateful for her support, Pramila. But I'll start there because I lost that race. And I think what I felt at that time, all that pain, the anger, the disappointment, is what many of us are feeling right now in this moment. But I soon learned that when a movement candidate loses, you don't really lose. Like, our work in Hawaii, we had 400 people knocking on doors on the last day. They went right in to organize a giant occupation in Mauna Kea to protect our most sacred place from desecration. And there's still hundreds of people from our campaign knocking on doors and really set up that progressive infrastructure in our state. So they're leading mass movements. They're passing legislation like Gender X markers on driver's license, starting organizations like the Hawaii Community Bail Fund to end mass incarceration in Hawaii. And then I found the home in People's Action. And I think that's something that I lacked a lot as a legislator. So that brings us to now, and all the amazing work that our colleagues and our member leaders are doing all across the nation. It's really all the issues that Bernie Sanders was pushing for. And they're building out like the broadest coalition possible in the short term, but also in the long term you just heard about. So, first there's a healthcare, Medicare for All campaign. Right now in this moment, we're really seeing the absurdity of tying healthcare to employment and how it makes absolutely no sense. So we're really grateful. Shout out to Bernie Sanders and Rep. Jayapal for introducing emergency legislation, the Healthcare Emergency Guarantee Act, that would empower Medicare to cover all healthcare costs for the uninsured and all out-of-pocket expenses for those without insurance for the duration of the coronavirus crisis. But of course, we know that no one should die from coronavirus because they're too poor to afford healthcare. No one should die from influenza because they're too poor. No one should die from any preventable illness because they're too poor to afford insurance. No one should die because they're too poor, right? So let's win coverage for everyone in America. In 1960, in my parents' generation, they fought for Medicare and they won. And in this moment, it's time to expand that to everyone. I think that was the original promise of the Medicare system. It's supposed to be for everyone, but over time and corporations and folks who seek to divide us based on race and gender, they've been chopping away at that. So yeah, we want to lower the age, not to 50 like it was 10 years ago, not to 60 like some folks are saying now, but to 0. So it's available to everyone. And we got to the 10-yard line with Bernie Sanders, but just imagine where we were 5 years ago and how far we got. And think about that when we're planning for the next 10. Like, we're gonna make this happen. Next is our homes guarantee campaign. Bernie's supported the homes guarantee vision that Ilhan talked about, that Tara and a lot of folks with People's Action are really blowing up in the last couple of years. And that means building 12 million social housing units and eradicating homelessness across the US. Like, a society that can have homeless people and billionaires at the same time is just unfathomably immoral. So we're reinvesting in existing public housing. We're protecting renters and bank tenants, paying reparation for centuries of racist housing policies. Like, the housing promise, part of the New Deal was healthcare, it was Social Security, retirement, but it was also housing. But that housing piece, just from HUD, that kept getting chipped down, and the 40-year mortgage that only went to basically white folks, really excluded a lot of people. So when we move policies, is not just to avoid those sorts of exclusionary racism and bigotry and sexism, but actually actively correct them. So that's what the home guarantee is pushing for. But in this moment, we're running a national campaign to push for not just a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, but zeroing out all rent and mortgage payments. So, when you get your job back in 3 months or 4 months, however long this crisis lasts, you're not going to have 3 months of rent paid that you got to figure out, got to pull out of thin air. Just trying to make common sense with the policy approach. So that's what we're demanding on that front. On the Green New Deal and climate justice, environmental justice, we're just like Bernie, we're calling for a people's Green New Deal, and we recognize that for many of us, corporations have been trampling over our communities for generations now. And we work with folks like Emma Lockridge in Detroit, who she already had masks and like the gear you need for these types of crises when the moment struck, because she needs it to breathe in her own home, right? And in Detroit, and she's been stuck in her home with the pollution pandemic, as she calls it, for years. And it's actually, when we're saying you're safer at home, maybe not for a lot of these people, really. So we got to understand that when these crises hit, whether it's a pandemic or the climate crisis, it's just exasperating pain that's already been there. So we know that if we're going to build a movement big enough to tackle a problem like climate change, we're going to have all of us in it. That means people of color, women, poor and working folks. And if we're going to get them in, we got to make it make sense for them. All right. So that's where I think people's action groups, multi-issue groups are really strategically placed, because we can show up. If someone cares about not getting like killed on the street or having their homes getting gentrified out of their own home, we should probably show up for them too first, right? If we want to loop them into like the broader environmental movement. So I think that's one piece that we're really pushing for right now. In terms of the COVID moment, we need jobs. Like we need jobs for people. The workplaces are acclimating now to less workers, more automation. And if we just return people to their same starvation wage jobs, is that enough, right? So we got to have a jobs program that's not contingent on this moment, on this absurd system that we're in now. And College for All is another campaign through Student Action. They're doing amazing work, this team, building on a campaign around free college for all. You might have heard about them when they released a letter to Joe Biden just last week around what young people want to see from the Democratic nominee. And in this moment, Student Action is leading the fight to also cancel all student debt. For me, I'm a first-generation college graduate. I was told the degree is supposed to be a ticket to the middle class. It feels more like a never-ending receipt. I just want this next generation to not have to dig themselves out of the hole like I'm trying to do now. Just flipping the lid. I think what's happening with this crisis is really just kind of showing us all how fragile and absurd this capitalist system that we're in is right now. We can't even hit pause. Just hit the pause button for a couple weeks. Everything just kind of falls into utter disarray. So we're learning about the disconnect between Wall Street and Main Street, how we can somehow have 17 million unemployed and see record gains in the stock market. And most importantly, we're seeing how Congress can just pull trillions and trillions of dollars out of thin air. And we're learning that scarcity is a political choice. So we're really pushing the People's Bailout. A group of us came together with other organizations, and we formed 5 principles that we need in order right now in this moment to not bail out corporations, but people. So, health is a top priority for all people with no exceptions. Right now, that means that Healthcare Emergency Act provide economic relief directly to the people. That's one thing that I think Bernie Sanders was pushing for was $2,000 every month until the crisis is over. Rescue workers and communities, not bailing out corporate executives. Saw what happened in 2008. It helped the Dow, but it didn't help most of us. And put a down payment on the regenerative economy while preventing future crises through a jobs program, a green jobs program, and protect the democratic process while protecting each other. So that means, allowing for all mail voting and protecting our civil rights. I think, we don't win every battle, but we also don't lose every battle either. So, I come from the working class. I won my first election at 22 years old, and it was a Republican district that had $1.1 million as the housing, the median house, and it always went Republican. It always went to a white male from California since statehood. But we believe that if we just talk to enough people, we can knocking off doors, we'd win. And it worked. Like we ended up winning by 26%, despite being outspent 10-1. So we were able to move things in the legislature, like 100% renewable energy goal, like same-day voter registration, like driver's license for undocumented folks. And, I think this is something that we could do all across the nation, so up and down the ballot. And I think that's, for me, why People's Action was just such a natural home for me, because it made those connections that I care about between race and gender. It allowed it made those connections between like the state struggles and the local struggles, but also the national fight. Because as I started pushing different policies like rent control, and there's no tenant organization to back me up, or I was pushing policies like $15 minimum wage, or even a $20 minimum wage, and there was no like worker centers, even like active unions to back me up. That was very difficult. So, we need, I think what the Bernie Sanders movement showed, that there's a lot of people, frankly, who just couldn't find their candidate that believed in what they care for, even though they supported all the policies that he was pushing and talking about. And it's up to us as people in the movement and people who want to get in the movement to kind of introduce them to the urgency of this moment, and how power demands us to take action right now, how the power structure and our needs require us to take the individual responsibility to actually talk to folks. So this isn't just about a virus. This is about our democracy, whether the system and society can actually handle the crisis and meet our real needs. So I'm going to kick it now to talk kind of more about the movement politics side. And look, I feel ready to go, ready to put in the work, and I hope you are too. So kicking it over to Divya. She's the Policy and Civic Engagement Coordinator with Community Voices Heard out in New York.
Hey y'all, my name is Divya Sundaram, and I organize with Community Voices Heard Power, a Black and Brown-led organization in New York State. CVH Power was founded to break open the halls of power and demand greater access for communities often left out of the political decision-making process, namely Black and Brown, low-income, and working families. We train our members to build and win issue-based and electoral campaigns, and we endorse candidates who will drive forward our vision for the world as it should be. We've worked on a lot of winning campaigns and a lot of losing campaigns. And we're always reminded that regardless of the outcome, our work outlives any single campaign. That doesn't mean that we turn our back on electoral work. It just means we turn our attention to dynamic and radical candidates at the congressional, state, and local levels who will elevate people power and will co-govern with us. That's why we're really excited at CVH Power to throw our energy into Jamal Bowman's congressional campaign in New York's 16th district. CVH Power has organized in that district for several years, and the incumbent is an establishment politician who's done very little to improve the material conditions of residents in his 30 years in office, let alone addressing deeper structural reform. We have to challenge the kind of politics that has left us 3 steps behind where we need to be, and I think we're all really feeling that in this moment. That's why we endorse Jamal, because he's an educator and organizer who works to build the power of Black and Brown communities in the Bronx and Westchester, and he fully embraces the politics of our movement. The Homes Guarantee, Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, and so much more. So we're ready to do whatever we can to elect Jamal, because we know that candidates like him are going to be really critical to the agenda we just laid out, especially as we work for a robust recovery package in a post-COVID-19 world. We highly encourage you to check out Jamal and other local candidates. These are campaigns that we can and must win to power our movement forward. I'm now going to pass it over to Amanda Kahn, who's the programs director with Plan Action in Nevada.
Hey y'all, my name is Amanda Kahn, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to our special guest. We're going to be joined with Representative Pramila Jayapal. Jayapal is a longtime friend of People's Action. She founded One America, one of our groups in Washington State, and she joined us in Nevada at the People's Presidential Forum. She's the author of Improved Medicare for All and was a strong endorser of Bernie for president. She'll be talking generally about what's next for this moment, and then a member of Iowa CCI Action has a question for her about her current work on healthcare in this crisis. Welcome, Congresswoman Jayapal.
And it looks like I'm, okay, there I am. I'm unmuted. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much, Amanda. And thank you to People's Action for everything that you are doing and for hosting this super important conversation on how we keep organizing and how we keep fighting for the kind of big, bold, transformative change that we all know that we need and that so many of you have been working on for so long. And so I want to just start by saying thank you for all the organizing and advocacy that you've done, for the hope that you've given to people across the country, for the vision that you've brought of a different kind of country and society where all of us benefit, not just the wealthy and the well-connected. And yes, I am really proud to have been a strong supporter of Senator Bernie Sanders and to have fought fiercely with him, for him, across the country, and to have been his national health policy chair as the lead sponsor of Medicare for All in the House. I'm also the lead sponsor of College for All in the House. I heard my friend Kaniela mention College for All. These policies were part and parcel of Bernie's vision, and together, Bernie Sanders leading the movement helped us to lift up what is a proposition agenda, not just an opposition agenda of how we run against Donald Trump, but a proposition agenda of how we actually bring racial, gender, economic justice to our country and lift up people that so desperately need assistance across the country. And that's everything from Medicare for All to just and humane immigration reform, taking on corporate supremacy and the corrupt administration, urgently addressing the crisis of climate change and climate justice, incarceration, and so much more. So it's not just possible to fight for these things, it's possible to fight for them in the context of a presidential campaign and really move the conversation in the country significantly as we build this multiracial, multi-generational movement that were personified in Bernie's campaign. So we should all be really proud of that support and that movement, because I think this has been a tough, week with Senator Sanders suspending his campaign. But I talked to him over the weekend. I talked to Jane over the weekend, and I can tell you that they are more convinced than ever that the slogan of the campaign, the "Not Me, Us" movement, is alive and well, and that we have a lot of work to do. So we get to celebrate first that we've moved the conversation so far, but at the end of the day, this is about all of us. It's about how we step up, how we take charge, how we take care of each other, how we recognize that truly we are all better off when we're all better off, how we lead in big and small ways, and how we organize to build on the progress that we've made. I've been a lifelong activist and organizer, and I used to have above my desk at One America this quote that I would always keep in mind for myself, which is, people would always say to me, politics is the art of the possible, Pramila. So you just need to, be more realistic about what you're asking for. And my thought was, if politics is the art of the possible, then it is up to us as activists, wherever we sit, whether we're inside Congress or in the state legislature or in a city council or as activists in an organization, our job is to change what is seen as possible, to push the boundaries of what is seen as possible. And so that is continuing to be the work that we're doing. And the coronavirus pandemic is just showcasing how badly we need transformative change, just how clearly broken our existing systems are, and just how much we need to think about solutions that actually match the scale of the crisis that we face. Not small ball, small thinking solutions, but solutions that match the problem of 17 million people just in the last 3 weeks filing unemployment claims on top of the unemployed before. A projected 35 million people that will lose their health insurance because they lost their jobs and their health insurance was tied to to their jobs. And so this, I think there's nowhere that this is more clear than in the healthcare system. Before the crisis, we already had 30 million Americans who were uninsured and another 40 million who were underinsured, and that number is skyrocketing now.
Hi, all. I think we've just had a quick pause in Representative Jayapal's live stream, and so hopefully she'll be rejoining us in a second. This is Ryan Greeno again, Director of Movement Politics at People's Action, and huge appreciation for everybody who's spoken, who's joined the call. We're going to get a call to action soon. Oh, and it looks like we've got Representative Jayapal back. Take it away, Representative.
I don't know where I got cut off, but sorry, y'all. It's the beauty of internet connections, and I'm thinking it's too many people on the call, which is always a great sign. So I'll just say that the pandemic has made it more clear than ever that we need to have a Medicare for all system, and we're going to have to fight for it, because we've seen that we've won the ideological battle in states across the country where even when people voted for a candidate other than Bernie Sanders, they were still supporting Medicare for all. And what if we had a Medicare for all system right now? We would actually have been able to respond far better to the pandemic. There would have been a centralized system that we could have mobilized quickly around, ensured universal coverage, and contained costs. And we wouldn't have had such a vulnerable population that had delayed healthcare for so long, particularly Black and brown folks and poor folks who have these chronic health conditions because of that lack of access to healthcare that is actually the set of risk factors that allows the virus to take hold. And so when you look at the fatality rates of African Americans, 71% in Chicago, 81% in Milwaukee County, it is absolutely unacceptable. Poor folks who live in much smaller spaces and can't isolate, having much greater incidence, people who are in jails and detention centers with no ability to follow public health. These are all the things that we have been fighting against and trying to make sure people weren't in this situation. So we are doing everything we can. Bernie Sanders and I introduced legislation last week that would provide coverage for anybody who doesn't have coverage to have their healthcare costs taken care of through this crisis. This week, I'm also going to introduce a series of proposals that would expand Medicare and Medicaid to cover both those who are unemployed and those who are uninsured. And hopefully that lays the groundwork for a more permanent expansion. And last week, I also introduced something called the Paycheck Guarantee Act, which would literally guarantee paychecks and benefits for people across this country so that we don't have workers who are having to go into the unemployment system worrying about how they're going to get their jobs and worrying about what their next steps are going to be. So all of these things are important, but the bigger question here is our movement and how we continue to have the vision and the faith, the unshakable faith, which, by the way, is different than optimism or pessimism. As Archbishop Tutu says, hope is actually unshakable faith that does not get moved by the traumas that we might face or the obstacles that might be put in the way. It is the absolute commitment and desire to the righteous principle that underlies all justice. And so that's what I know this movement has. That's what we're fighting for. And I'm just so grateful to be in it with you, to be in it with Senator Sanders, who is not going to go anywhere. He's suspending his campaign for president, but he absolutely intends to be helping to continue to shepherd, guide, support this movement as we grow and we bring about real change for the country.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Representative Jayapal. And now we're going to have Bree Moss, a leader from Iowa CCI Action, talk a little bit about her experience under this healthcare crisis. Bree.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bree Moss. I'm a member of Iowa Citizens for Community Improvement, and I'm also a type 1 diabetic. I survive basically by rationing my insulin and limiting my income. I was laid off a few weeks ago due to the pandemic, and now more than ever, I'm unsure what the future holds for me and people like me. So I'm ready to take back control of my future, and I want to say thank you so much to Congresswoman Jayapal for being here. It was so great to listen to you speak, and I think now I'm going to pass it back to Ryan.
Thank you so much, Bree. Well, Amanda Khan is going to lead us in a conversation about our strategy here. Thanks so much, Representative Jayapal, and to other speakers. Take it away, Amanda, and we're going to get text banking to actually act on that Healthcare Emergency Guarantee Act right now.
Hey, y'all. So it's me again, Amanda Khan, Program Director at Plan Action in Nevada. I just wanted to talk to y'all about our national organizing plan. We know that at scale, the coronavirus crisis will likely in America leave alone tens of millions unemployed, over 500,000 sick, and 23,000 dead, with millions more thinking that they might have the virus but don't know how to get help, and they don't know how to pay their bills for treatment, and millions in essential jobs fearful of exposure. The list of suffering goes on and on. If ever there was a moment to organize to both alleviate an immediate suffering and strengthen our healthcare system, economy, and political systems so that they truly represent us, now is that time. People are feeling alone and isolated and alienated, and we need to organize them to take action. This is our plan for action, and we need your help. We need your help because we want to reach out to millions of people. Through mass peer-to-peer texting, you can sit behind your computer and one event reach out to over 1,000 people. Together, we can connect with millions. Through these conversations, we will identify people we need to engage with more deeply. We will find people who are conflicted around their worldview. Maybe they think rugged individualism will save us. Or maybe they think that we should just stockpile alone. We are all in this together, and we should band together and make our government work for a multiracial working class around the world. We will find people who share our beliefs and analysis that Nigel and Kenyatta and others laid out, but are cynical about voting and using our democracy to create change in our lives. Some of these people found inspiration in Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or Julian Castro and are feeling sad and hopeless in this moment. We need to motivate those people to unite us, to grab onto our democracy and make it work for us. And we will find people totally with us who we've never met, who will volunteer and take on leadership roles in this fight. We are going to use deep canvassing to follow up with all of those people. Instead of just talking to them, we're going to listen and share our own stories. We've done our research with Yale and US Berkeley on this deep canvassing model, and we've proven that it works. So what are you going to do in these text and phone conversations? First, we're going to do a wellness check. If people are in crisis now with their health and or needing food, we'll connect them with resources immediately. Second, we're going to ask them about what worries them in this crisis. Maybe they still have a job, but don't know whether they'll be there in 6 months. Maybe they are worried they're going to get sick because they're working at Amazon warehouse and social distancing is not being practiced. Maybe they can't take care of their kids because they're home from school. And maybe we're going to make meaning of their worry with them and connect the dots back to the idea that our health and political and economic systems didn't work well with us before this crisis, but that we have a vision to make it work afterwards. Finally, we're going to move them to action, pushing members of Congress like we'll do tonight, or putting pressure on corporations like United Health, the largest private insurer of Blackstone, the largest landlord, to put some of our ill-gotten profits back into the hands of people who need healthcare and housing this crisis. The only way this works is if you commit. So I'm asking each and every one to commit by taking action and signing up to join us every day for joint texting and deep canvassing phone banking every Wednesday. The link is in the chat. Please sign up now because we are starting right after this call, so please stick around and join us. Sign up in the link in the chat. And now I'm going to pass it back to George, who's People's Actions Director.
Hey, thank you, Amanda. That was awesome. Appreciate everybody. Such great work on this call. I'm going to now turn it over to Mehrdad Osman, who's going to help us figure out how we move to action right now on the bill Representative Jayapal was just talking about. So, Mehrdad, can you take it away?
All right, great. Hey, everyone. My name is Mehrdad Osman. I'm on the national staff of People's Action. It's so exciting to see so many hundreds of people from across the country on this call. And this is, I love the inspiration that all the speakers had for us. And I got to say, my favorite part of the call is where we take action, which is now. And tonight's action is very, very meaningful. We're going to do exactly what Amanda talked about. We are together, we're building thousands of circles of support to make sure that people are connected during this very difficult time. And but we're going to do that by taking action. And you can do that now by joining us at this link. And it was shared in the chat already. I'll just speak it for people. It's ppls.ac/join Slack. And so folks can just follow the link that's in the chat. I'm about to pass this over to my colleague Derek Crow, our communications director. But just to kind of set context for the work that we're going to do together, we are every single Tuesday, we're going to be text banking to people in different states all across the country. Tonight, we're going to be texting into the state of Michigan. And the reality is we feel what everyone else is feeling. People are hurting out there. And it's our work as community leaders to listen to that pain and to transform that pain and to turn that private pain into public power. And if you're watching this on your phone, we're about to use that phone or we're about to use that computer as a tool of justice. Same as if you're on your laptop. In just a few minutes, we're going to get trained in two different tools, Spoke and Slack. We're going to use the tool called Spoke for the actual texting. We'll use the program called Slack for questions that come up as we're texting voters. As I said, we're text banking voters in the state of Michigan, and we know it's a crucial state for this fall. It's also been an epicenter of COVID-19. And we're going to be texting voters to do a few simple things. One, we're going to be checking in with people first to really see how they're doing. We want to genuinely connect with people on a very human level. We want to share very simple community resources with them about where they can get food, financial assistance, and more. And then if the person's ready, we're going to recruit them to do what we're doing now, which is volunteering and helping build community muscle. People's Action is a national organization. We have a member organization in Michigan called Michigan United, and we're going to be asking voters if they will volunteer with them. And then we're going to take action on one of the big issues that we talked about tonight, and that is healthcare. Bernie Sanders and Congresswoman Jayapal have introduced the Healthcare Emergency Guarantee Act. We're going to be asking them to contact the representatives and senators and urge them to support that bill. Again, it's called the Healthcare Emergency Guarantee Act. So those are the three things we're going to be doing. Asking people, how are you doing? What resources do you need? How really are you healthy? Are you well? We're going to ask them to volunteer, to text bank and to phone bank. And finally, we're going to ask them to support that big healthcare bill. Some people that you get in touch with tonight, they may not be ready to take action. They may be in a pretty desperate situation. But for everyone who's willing to volunteer and take action, let's encourage them to do that. So how's all this going to work? We've got the script loaded already into the Spoke texting program. It's very, very simple. And from here, this is the action and very practical part of the call. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Derek Crow, our communications director, to show people how to do that. And again, the way to join us is the link that should be shared in the chat already. It's ppls.ac/join Slack. So folks can go there and start to get into the portal to start texting people. So I'm going to try and turn it over to Derek here. All right, Derek, are you with us? I can't hear his audio.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
There you go. Yep. Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah. Sorry, everybody. This is Derek Crow, the Communications and Digital Director at People's Action National Staff. Thank you all for joining us so much. And again, thank you, Mehrdad, for that introduction. And sorry for the brief delay. We're going to be taking you through getting started with our texting program, as you mentioned, which is Spoke. If you are familiar with the campaign for the candidate that we have been talking about all night, you will be very familiar with this program. If you've done this kind of volunteering with them, it's the same platform. On my screen right now, you're seeing the channel you will land in if you go to ppls.ac/text Slack. That will take you straight to the right location. That will drop you straight into this channel. This is the national network Slack for People's Action. This is where we organize our texting program for both this particular texting program and for all of our future programs. So if you join this channel, you're going to be able to not only participate in this one particular campaign, or as well as the other things that we'll be doing down the line to advocate for the issues that Kanyella and others have spoken about tonight. But before I do that, I just want to make a quick plug. We have another crowdcast coming up at the end of the week. And if you want to sign up for that, it is ppls.ac/care, C-A-R-E. That will be a crowdcast specifically on the bill on which we're going to be texting about tonight. So just mark that URL down, ppls.ac/care, and we'll make sure to give you more information about that at the end of the week. But just to get us started, when you join this channel, you're going to see at the top here, there at the very top of the Slack channel, there is a set of topics that are saved at the top for your benefit as you're learning how to use this tool. At the one that you want to go to get started and sign up is this third link, which is ppls.ac/spoke-PAI. Now, you're going to have a slightly different experience than me because I've already signed up. When you click this button, you're going to be asked to grant Slack and Spoke permissions to talk to each other, and that will smooth along your process of not having to register twice for both of these services. Once you're registered for Slack, if you give Slack and Spoke that permission, they can speak to each other and you don't have to do a manual sign up. I've already done that, so I'm going to go ahead and click this. And this will take me directly into Spoke, but I'm an admin, so I need to switch to Texter. Now, we have a set of campaigns that will be live here. When you come to this particular screen, when the campaign goes live, you'll be able to hit a button that I'm going to hit reassign my replies. That I have a previous a set of texting that I've been doing. When you go here, you're going to be, when the campaign goes live, you'll be able to request new texts for the day. And it looks like that campaign is still coming online at the moment. So I'm going to skip back to a training slide that I've got just for this purpose, and we can talk about how to get started. Can y'all see my screen all right from this location? Can y'all just nod at me in the chat? Okay, that's great. So I'm going to be in this kind of minimized view just to help speed through the slides as we jump around a little bit here. This is the kind of screen you're going to see here. What I've got circled in red, you're going to want to request more text. When you do that, the administrators of the program will get an alert and will know that you are either done with your most recent batch of texts or that you can request, that you're ready to request your first batch. You can pick how many text conversations you want to request at first. And then from there, if you want to start with a small batch to get your feet wet, that's a perfectly fine way to get started. As you move along, you'll be feeling pretty comfortable requesting big batches like 500 or 1,000 at a time. That may sound kind of crazy, like how am I going to text 1,000 people at a time if you've never done it before? The important thing to know about how Spoke works is that Spoke kind of breaks the parts of the conversation into its component parts. So once you start this process, you're going to say hi to 1,000 people all at once, or 500 people, or however many that you get requested at the beginning here. So once you send all those messages, you can give the folks who are getting these texts from a stranger some time to build up in your replies, and I'll show you what that looks like here in just a second. If you go, once you have sent your first text, once you've gotten your first assignment, you'll have the option to send your first text, This is what that will look like. So this button will only show up once you've been assigned new texts. You'll click on this thing that's got the green button. That's how many new texts you can send at the very beginning. And once you click that button, you'll be taken to a new interface, and it's the actual texting interface. This is what that will look like. It's a very simple looking browser-based program. It will work both on your phone or on your desktop. A lot of folks like to use the desktop version because you can hold down on some keyboards the enter button here and it'll just blast text out really quickly. I don't have that luxury, unfortunately. I just got to tap the enter key as many times as it will let me. This will send this very first message that you can see here to the folks. This is not the actual campaign we're talking about tonight. Tonight, we're going to be doing a strictly C3 campaign that's about an issue. The example we have here is from some previous work. So just to be clear, what we're doing tonight is not electoral work. It's just issue-based work. Now, once you have blasted through your first moment of the activity here where you're just saying hi to tons of people, you'll be kicked out of this screen once you've sent the last initial message. What you'll get is a screen that's like this. It's the basic starting screen again. But now you're going to have the option that you can see here with the red alert, or the orange alert button that says send replies. It's got a number here. That's how many people have answered you back at this point. Now, what a lot of folks like to do when they're first getting started is request an initial small bit of text and then let a few people build up in the replies, so you're not just constantly just getting to one step further in the conversation and then waiting some more. If you want to wait like 5 or 10 minutes, those things will build up quickly, and you can come back in and kind of batch the next set of your work. So when you're ready, you then click send replies, and you'll be kicked back into this interface again. Now, from here, this is where the actual conversation is starting between you and the person. You've said hello at this point, that your interface will show your messages in blue and theirs in gray. What you'll get is, you've sent your scripted opening, and you're going to get, their extemporaneous responses back. Anytime that somebody types a message back to you, it will show up in this interface. Now from here, you're going to start beginning to log their responses to the question. So if you click on the question we're asking and log their response, which you'll do right here. So if you click this is the question we asked, it will pop up a display that will give the possible answers. You pick the answer that's most appropriate to what they've said, and it will automatically autofill what we're suggesting that you say in response. So after each response, you'll click it, and you'll be moved to the next conversation in your batch of replies. So sometimes you might need to do some different things besides that. This is the zoomed in bottom row of that interface. So you may want to skip a reply, or use a canned response, or opt out the contact, add a tag to the conversation, or escalate the conversation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what that's like. If you skip a reply, which is right next to the send button, sometimes you're going to get yourself into a situation where the conversation just dead ends, or it's just time to move on, or they've said thank you and you don't want to get into a loop where you're saying thank you back and forth to each other. You just say skip reply, and that will push you to the next moment of the conversation, or to the next person who's talking to you. If you hit skip reply, you move on without sending a reply back, essentially. That's essentially kind of hanging up on them. And you can return to conversations that you've skipped if you feel like you've skipped it because you don't have an answer that you can provide them right away. If they've asked you a question, you can skip it and come back to it. And I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. Now, there are some differences between skipping a reply and opting out. Just to make clear, the reasons you would skip a reply is the conversation ends, or it's clear the conversation is not going to be productive and that they aren't sharing any information, or you've already logged an answer to what we're asking you about. This says candidate. We're not talking about candidates tonight. We're talking about a piece of legislation. But they've given you an answer, and it's clear that they don't want a response, so you just hit skip reply. Canned responses can be really helpful. You can use canned responses when the conversation goes off script a little bit, but we kind of have a sense of the kinds of questions people are going to ask. So to use a canned response, it's this button that can show up right here. I've got it circled in red. It's one of the buttons that will appear at the bottom of your screen. You click it. It will bring up a pull-down menu that has a list of responses that we've anticipated from folks, or a list of questions that people typically ask in this kind of campaign. And if you click it, it will autofill a response. So if they say, who is the sponsor of HR 123? You can just click that question on the list, and it will say Representative Jayapal is the sponsor of HR 123, or whatever relevant response we've logged in there ahead of time. You opt out is a really important function. Opting out of contact prevents us from sending more messages to that contact. It is at once a function you want to be sure you're only using when it's appropriate, and it's also a very common thing that we have to do. Opting out of contact allows you to apologize for the inconvenience, or you can just opt out without a message. That's also an option you'll get. So while in the conversation, if you want to do this, you just click the big orange opt out button. Spoke will fill in a message to the recipient, and you can click send. Now, you want to use this sparingly. Do not opt out people just because they stop responding, or they say no in response to a question, or even if they're rude, or if it's a wrong number. Those are not reasons to opt people out, because once we opt them out, we cannot legally send them another text to that phone number. So there are some reasons that you absolutely do have to use the opt-out button. That's when they say the word stop to you. You'll often get just a one-word stop as an answer. That means opt out, and you're required to remove them from the list at that point with the opt-out feature. If they say remove me, unsubscribe, take me off your list, or they clearly and explicitly ask to be removed from the list in some other way, but you can very much tell that they're trying to get off the list, that's when you use opt-out. You'll have the option to add tags. Tags are really helpful to give information to the moderators who are helping you along and helping to train folks. Those are the folks that are responsible on the back end for making sure the program's running smoothly. So here are some reasons you would want to use a tag. Again, this references a candidate. We're not addressing a candidate tonight. We're talking about a piece of legislation, but the two reasons you would really want to use this in our situations that we'll get into tonight is if someone needs Spanish language conversation partners, or if you need to escalate a conversation. So to use those tags, you would click Manage Tags, and it will ask you what tags you want to apply. The reason that you would want to escalate a conversation, that's something you would want to do to bring this to the moderator's attention. It's one of the options you get when you hit Add Tags. You need to do that if the conversation strays into a sensitive conversation, that you know it's really important that someone with a lot of sensitivity to this person's issues responds to. That's a great reason to hit Escalate Conversation. So that's kind of a whirlwind introduction. And don't worry, if you missed a piece or you don't quite feel comfortable next, or just diving straight in, we've also got a video version of this training that's linked in Slack, and I'll show you how to find it. Again, if you go up to the top here, you will see the topics for the channel in the texting channel, and you can click Spoke Training. There's a video version of this, and if you do that, you can reference any part of this. You've also got the slides you've got access to here. If you go to ppls.ac/Slack training, all the slides that I've got to train you on this are available. That's for Slack, but there's also a Spoke Training as well here at the top. Sorry, mixed those two up there for a second. We are going to be here in the channel to help you tonight for as long as the texting is open. And so if you have a question, if you need some help, you can tag me in a conversation. I'm Derek Crow. Again, I'm in the chat with you. There are other moderators that will wave in a moment to show you that they're moderators, but don't hesitate to ask some questions and don't hesitate to use those resources to review. So I'm going to kick it back to Murdad to close. Murdad, go right ahead.
Listen, I just really want to thank folks. And what's exciting about this call is that we had so many incredible allies on the call, and the fact that we can move straight into action together. I just glanced at the chat for the crowdcast itself, and I know some folks are having technical difficulties. People can just directly email me if that's easier. I know my colleague Laurel Wales already posted her email. I can also post my email in there as well. Name is a little difficult to spell, but it's m.azamoon@peoplesaction.org. So again, M period A, Z as in zebra, E, M as in Mary, U as in uncle, N as in Nancy. That's at peoplesaction.org. I'll put my email into that chat as well. If folks are having any difficulties, please just email us and we'll try and do the best we can to get you hooked up. We're going to be texting every Tuesday from here on through the election. We'll be phone banking every Wednesday from here on through the election, and just very excited to have thousands of people joining this call to do both of those things. We are going to be text banking just for about 15 minutes. We just want to get our feet wet and see how this really goes. And we'll be debriefing the experience via Zoom, and we'll share that Zoom link in the Slack channel. And we'll do that in about 15 minutes. So again, we just want people to get your feet wet, get your knee deep into text banking into Michigan, at least for tonight. And just very excited to have folks join this. Super excited. Thank you very, very much for joining the call. We're going to close, and always forward, always forward. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the Slack channel. Thanks, everyone.